Hello again, this is Sarah teaching you some Copic coloring techniques. I did the skin already on this particular image and now I'm going to show you how I like to color hair. I'm going to start with one of my favorite combinations for hair colors, and I'll put the color numbers down at the bottom of the screen. I like to use YR20, E31, E35, and E37. And the way that I color hair is a little bit different from coloring skin because I actually do use the pen on its tip as opposed to using the pen on its side. So this is where I will be using short strokes instead of using the pen on its side, doing broader strokes. So the way that I like to do is crown down and bottom up, and I'll show you how I would color. So I'm going to start by coloring this section of her hair. When you're coloring hair, it works well to color in small sections at a time. So I'm going to start with this section of her hair first of all. So I'm going to use this as the crown, and I'm going to do small strokes coming towards the center of that section, and then I'm going to go from the bottom up, small flicks from the bottom up towards the center of this section. And that was with the YR20. Now I'm going to move to the E31, and I'm going to do the same thing. It's hard to see on screen because it's a fairly pale color, but basically I'm just slowly building up that area. Move to my next color, which is the E35. I'm going to do the same thing again. Small strokes, crown down, and bottom up. Now this color is a little bit darker, so I'm going to keep the strokes shorter. The next one being the E37. Same thing again, but shorter strokes. Bottom up, and then that was the crown down. So now you can start to see a little bit of definition there and a little bit of difference between the colors. The idea is that you want to create a shadow towards the bottoms and the center being lighter. So if I go back to my original color, the base color, the YR20, and I just start the process again. Crown down, bottom up. And I just keep doing this process until the whole area is filled in. Go back to the second color, which was the E31. And then I'll move to the next area. So back to the YR20. I'm going to do this side over here. So again, crown down. Now I'm doing in the opposite direction, and bottom up. Move to my next color, which is the E31. Crown down, a little bit shorter strokes because this color is darker, so I'm not going to bring it as far into the center. Move to the next color, which is the E35, and again shorter strokes for this one because it is again darker. So we want the tops and the bottoms to be darker than the overall center. Crown down and bottom up. And then E37, which is my darkest color. And this will be the shortest strokes. I'm going to go under here and add a little bit of definition because it's obvious that that's going to be a shaded part. And then I just go back and forth, back to the YR20, and I repeat this process until that whole area is filled in. And go back and add a little bit more touches on the other side now that that ink has dried. The one thing you'll find different with coloring hair is that you might want to give the ink a chance to dry a little bit before you go in and add some more strands, so that they will remain individual strands and not just disappear into the blended ink or wet blended ink. I have this last section to do, so I'm going to go down here now and do the YR20 crown down and bottom up. And once each section is dry, I will go back and add a little bit more detail. So I'm just working my way through the order of those markers. This is the E31 again. And again, the darker the pen, the shorter the strokes. So E35, I'm going to use some shorter strokes here. Crown down and bottom up. So you want the hair to look natural, and as your own hair has individual strands, you want that to look the same way on your coloring. You want to be able to see the individual strands, so you don't want it to be all blended out smoothly, otherwise you can't actually see the individual hair strands, which kind of defeats the purpose. So to get a nice natural looking hair, short strokes, and try not to allow the colors to blend together, otherwise it will be very flat looking. But you do want to make sure that there's no white remaining in your hair. You want the base color to be your lightest color that you've worked with, in this case the YR20. So now I'm just going to go back and add a little bit of definition into these other areas now that they've dried. So here I'm using the E37, just adding a little bit of definition. Alright, I took a slight pause in the video there just to show you, so you didn't have to see all of my repeating the same process again, but you can now see more of a finished product here. And I've just repeated that same process with those colors over and over. And you can see that after a section has dried, I've gone back in and added some more detail so that it actually shows up instead of just blending into the wet ink. The one other thing I think I'm going to do is add a little bit more definition with an even deeper shade of brown, which is the E39. And I'm just going to go in and add a few little touches of extra definition here, just so it kind of stands out. I kind of like to add a lot of depth to my coloring, and so I'll tend to use 5 or 6 different colors in a particular project. So that's just personal preference. The nice thing about using browns, using the E shades, especially when you're doing hair or if you're doing wood or anything in nature, they all work really, really nicely together. So you can use a pretty wide assortment of shades to get some very good, some nice definition and some nice contrast in your coloring. What you also want to do when you're doing hair is take a couple of strokes of the darker color all the way through, just to sort of break it up and it doesn't look too much, you know, chunk of beige, a chunk of brown. So just try to make it look a little bit more natural. So there we go. You can see, I think, the overall effect in that you can see some individual strands. You can certainly see a more of a highlighted area and some more definition here in some darker area. So hopefully that gave you some tips on how I like to color hair.